Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at implicit objects in EL. So if you go to the internet and search for something like EL implicit objects, or possibly JSTL implicit objects would do the trick, I'm not sure, and then you can find a bunch of pages, and let's take a look at one of them, and hopefully we'll get a list here of objects that are predefined in expression language. So here we have a list, JSTL implicit objects, and we've already used the param object, but you can see here that there are actually, I think, 11 of these objects, and we're just going to take a quick look at a couple of them in this tutorial. So they're all potentially useful, and param is probably far and away the most useful. And notice param values contains an array of the parameter values, which can also be very useful. But now what I want to show you in this tutorial is we've got a bunch of scoped objects here. We've got page scope, request scope, session scope and application scope, and they provide you with an alternative mechanism for accessing scoped variables if you want to really specify the scope. So in a previous tutorial I created this servlet which sets objects into the three different scopes, request, session and application. And to take an example, I've got user2 here set into the session, and I'm going to go to the JSP file that this servlet forwards to, and I'm already accessing that bean directly via this syntax, via just using its name that I set for the attribute name in the session object. But I can also use the session scope object. So I've got these four objects, and like for application scope you'd access things that were set into the web context or the servlet context object if you like. And for request scope you could access, of course, request attributes. But let's take a look as an example at session scope. So I'll say session scope dot user2 dot name, and let's save this and clean the project, and I'll just run this servlet here, and you can see that I've accessed successfully an object that I set at session scope. One more object that I'm going to mention briefly here is there's also a implicit object called page context, and let's just take a look. So if I type here page context dot and do control space, page context gets you basically it allows you to access the objects that you could normally expect to access from a servlet or from a JSP page. So you've got stuff like you've got the out object here, and the request and the response, and session and things like that. So it's handy if you want to access any of these objects in JSTL. You can always get them via the page context. Let's not do anything with that now, but it's there if you need it. And so that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.